Hello, my name is Gary and I will be presenting the pre-workshop webinar Pronunciation for Teachers. Now, why should you trust me? First of all, I've been a practicing teacher for more than 5 years. I've also worked at Skyeng for about a year, where I've been a part of the Talks team as well as the Speaking Clubs team. I've also worked in many different areas, such as methodology, pronunciation, grammar, and even training in general. Now, let's have a look at our agenda for this workshop. First of all, we are going to cover why it's not possible for every teacher to improve their pronunciation. We'll also go over what makes it possible for a teacher to improve their pronunciation. Following that, we'll have a look at what steps there are to take to improve your pronunciation, and last but not least, we'll cover some activities that can be done individually as well as when supervised and supervised only. Now, let's have a look at why not every teacher can improve their pronunciation and what makes improving a teacher's pronunciation possible. First of all, let's have a look. You have probably thought about improving your pronunciation at some point in time. Maybe you were in high school, maybe you were in university. You probably also worked on some kind of action plan in order to do this. The result, however, might be up in the air. Either you succeeded or you did not. What happened here is entirely up to you. But there are some reasons why many people fail. And there are some intricacies as well that teachers have to deal with when trying to improve your pronunciation. And there's one very important thing that we need to go over as well. Once you reach a certain age, the exact age, however, is debatable. But many researchers have seen that once you reach a certain age, it becomes quite difficult to only via imitation improve your own pronunciation, because there are many different factors that go into it, and we're going to cover only a few of them. So let's have a look at one of the first intricacies that teachers have to deal with and why it's now a step-by-step process in order to do it. First of all, phonetics and pronunciation, at least nowadays, are not integrated into teaching and learning. On the contrary, in formal settings, for example, and formal education, phonetics is taught as an entirely different subject and is not integrated with the normal language-related subjects. Then, even in professional practices, teachers work with course books where pronunciation features are only integrated into, say, grammar or lecture study materials and not really practiced in many other forms. And last but not least, if there is some kind of pronunciation practice, it's only done via corrections and not via analysis and the step-by-step approach it requires. That would be, for example, me giving you if and then and trying to teach you conditionals by only giving you corrections based on the sentences you make. It's not entirely possible. Now, all of this leads to a situation where there is little to no explicit knowledge about the actual pronunciation features and how to teach them and just using them in general. Now let's have a look at intricacy number 2. Teachers have many years of repetitive practice under their belt. And for example, in the absence of many of these natural pronunciation features that can be learnt, teachers spend years working on their own routines and cementing those. And then we have a fact that, based on where you are, very young learners and beginners often have trouble understanding English that is rife with different pronunciation features. So that is another issue here. And then the last one we need to cover, even when you learn something specific, maybe some specific pronunciation feature or whatnot, there's no clear way to practice it because there's no indefinite submersion as there would be, for example, in an English-speaking country. All of this leads to a situation where there is no actual framework regarding how to make all these different pronunciation features stick, at least in your everyday English. Now, how can you get over these two intricacies? Step 1. You can try and raise your students' awareness of these different pronunciation features so that you won't have to simplify your own language. That is one of the biggest areas that most people have trouble with, after all. And then you can have a look and make sure that once you've identified a particular study feature, that you can practice this every single day, at least via personal activities. Now, let's have a look. Let's say that you want to start improving your pronunciation. We recommend picking up one of these 3 books, either Sound Foundations by Adrian Underhill, English Pronunciation in Use, the series by Cambridge, or Teaching English Pronunciation by Joanne Kenworthy. Now, there is very likely going to be a workshop or at least a course about pronunciation in Skyeng in the future. However, when, we're not entirely sure just yet. Now, what to study? There are generally 2 types of features that you can study. We have the segmental features, which is how the individual sounds are articulated and then pronounced, such as voiced consonants, unvoiced consonants, short and long vowels, as well as diphthongs. Now, many of you already know about diphthongs. It's, for example, the AE in aeroplane. Then we have suprasegmental features, which are how the individual sounds behave when they are put together with others. We have weak forms, elision, assimilation, catenation, intrusion, word and sentence rhythm, word and sentence stress, as well as intonation, which includes things like chunking, signposting, etc. And just to go back to word and sentence stress, this is also one of the areas that many people struggle with because native speakers, for example, can change the meaning of a sentence by changing where they emphasize certain words. And these are things that need to be taught in many cases. Now, what are the steps that you can take to improve your pronunciation, and what activities are there that you can consider? First of all, there are 3 things that you need to make sure of. The first is to raise your own awareness. You need to make sure about what the particular pronunciation feature is that you want to learn. Then you need to make sure how to articulate it, how to use it, and how not to use it. And lastly, you need to know where it can be used and where it can't be used. Then we have articulatory control exercises. These are vocal exercises, minimal pairs, tongue twisters, and all these other things that you can practice. And there are a slew of them on video hosting sites like YouTube. Now, then we have the extended practice exercises. These are things such as imitation, where you try and copy pronunciation by ear, shadowing, where you try and say things together with a native English speaker, trying to use as much as you can what you hear they say. Shadowing, for example, where you try and follow a native English speaker, for example, and say exactly what they say in different situations. Then you can record and correct yourself, as well as read out loud. Now, I do have to make a note here. Reading out loud is quite often prescribed in different situations, and yes, it can help improve your pronunciation, but only after a ton of work has been done beforehand. So, let's have a look at the individual activities, as it were. First of all is shadowing. How do you shadow? You need a listening piece, any kind of listening piece that is between 1 and 2 minutes long. It can be longer, but then it becomes exceedingly more difficult. Then, if you don't have a text, you need to make sure to transcribe it and make sure that while you're listening to it, you note all the different things such as weak forms, stress, linking words, intonation, pauses, and even voice pitch. All of these things are incredibly necessary. Then, without listening to the actual piece again, you try and practice these things. You read it aloud until you're comfortable enough. Then and only then can you play the recording again and say and follow the actual listening piece. And the important thing here is not to stop the recording. Try and do as much as you can in the exact way as the speaker. Now, recording and correcting yourself. This can be done for shadowing, for imitation, and even reading out loud. However, we will focus only on shadowing. So, in order to record yourself and correct yourself with shadowing, you need to do all the preparatory steps that shadowing includes, such as gathering the actual listening pieces you want to use, transcribing them, writing down the intonation, the pauses, the pitch, etc. Only then can you use your cell phone, for example, or any other recording device to record yourself. And once you're done with the shadowing, you stop recording, go back to listen to it, and then fix any kind of mistake or error that you do find. Then let's move on to imitating. When you imitate, you also need to choose a particular listening piece. It might be 1 minute, 2 minutes, or even a bit longer. However, the shorter ones are often better. Then you listen and you watch, for example, and then you try and copy a phrase or a sentence that you hear. And you do that only by ear. So if they say, "This is a pen," you say, "This is a pen." If they say, "Aye, laddie," then you say, "Aye, laddie," for example. And you do this with the entire audio. Once you're done there, you can go back and record yourself imitating them. Go back and fix the actual issues that you hear. Then we have reading out loud. In order to make sure that this is a success, you first need to choose a paragraph and read it out loud. Then you need to choose a particular paragraph and mark each of these sentences with a sound script. Pronunciation markup and all those things. You can also add in the intonations, the voice pitch, and all these different things. Then you practice this until you are comfortable. You accent the actual content words and then speak over all these structured words quite quickly. And once you're comfortable here, only then can you start alternating, reading one paragraph aloud and then reading one paragraph silently, then reading one paragraph aloud and one silently. Now, let's have a look at your action plan. How can you go about improving your pronunciation? First of all, you need to try and choose a pronunciation teaching resource. For example, Sound Foundations by Adrian Underhill. Then you need to choose 1 or 2 pronunciation features, segmental or suprasegmental, or maybe one of each. And then you can maybe register and attend one of our workshops that have been designed by one of our amazing experts here at Sky Young. You can also work on these on your own, but that will be it. And this was the Pronunciation for Teachers workshop. Bye-bye!